Today we are taking a look at all the comps in TFT's patch 15.6 to see which units, comps and power-ups you should be playing to get as much LP as you can before set 15 comes to a close. So let's start in the S tier, and first up we have probably the strongest comp in the entire game so far this patch, Mentor Janna. This comp works around the veteran power-up on Janna, turning her into a mentor unit and rolling to 3-star her and Kobuko at level 6 before adding in more mentors, strategists and mech units to complete your board. Janna wants a blue buff, dual gauntlet and giant slayer to almost exclusively carry your board's damage, and Kobuko is crazy strong with the best defense power-up combined with items that grant shields like Sterax and Protector's Vow. But generally any strong tank items like Warmogs or Gargoyles are also fine. So if you open up the game with a few of the core units like Janna or Kobuko, a reroll augment, a couple of tiers or a crystal Gambit opener, you should definitely look to play this comp because it's a bit too OP. Then we have Akali, who didn't get nerfed last patch, which makes her just as strong as before, but now even stronger with the nerfs to the other S tier comps. For this one, you want to get yourself straight to level 8 and build around Supreme Cells and Executioners, whilst also playing around other traits like Mighty Mech and Strategists. The thing with Akali though is you do need perfect items for her, so if you have Nash's Tooth components or QSS, then give it a go, as it's extremely good at assassinating those monster trainer boards or any backline carries in general. Definitely try and get the Crimson Veil power up onto Akali and then go for something like Tankzilla or Body Change on K'Sante. The main thing to consider when playing Akali is your positioning by always placing her on the A3 or A5 hexes, and it will make her dash to the enemy corner carries, leading to your enemies going 8th and having a generational crash out. Next up, heavyweight Malzahar is back in business after they added a new power up for him called Noxus Trap, which gives him burn, wound, shred and sunder all in one, and yes, it's as OP as it sounds. So this comp is simple. You basically rush level 7, slam your items on Malzahar, 3-star him along with Darius and Jayce if you high roll a bit too, and then basically just sit back and watch those juicy dots evaporate entire enemy boards. If you get an early 2-star Malz with this power up, you will win the majority of fights in the early stages without too much trouble, so definitely give it a try. If you get a good opener for Katarina, it can be extremely lethal if you have the right spot for it. But what defines a good spot? Well, early copies of Katarina of course, her best in-slot item components to slam, any Radiant items for her that she likes, especially Radiant Hand of Justice, or any reroll augments like a cheeky early heroic grab bag for the extra duplicators. Then there's also those key scaling power-ups like over 9000 or Max Arcana. The key to playing Cat though is knowing you can win a lot early by setting up a strong streak and then hit Cat 3 in good tempo, so you can then push levels and add in your full Battle Academia and Executioner board later on. Now we have one of the strongest comps from last patch, Kog'Maw with Bastions. Now you can also play Kog'Maw with Heavyweights, Protectors or even Juggernaut frontlines, but the Bastion one is performing the best so far. You want to angle for this comp if you have early reroll augments or most importantly artifact augments, as one Dawn Core, Lich Bane or even a Wit's End and you're guaranteed some LP hit. Plus alternatively you can also put a ranged artifact on Yasuo to make him pop off too. So get yourself to level 7 and reroll for Kog'Maw, Swain and even Yasuo, especially if you have a Bastion emblem, and then you can fit your whole board in at level 7. For fruits, you want Fairy Tail or Double Strike for Kog'Maw and Tankzilla for Swain to give your Cog even more time to ramp up and melt through enemies' boards. Finally, for our last S tier comp of the patch, we have one of the strongest fast 8 boards from last patch in the Mighty Mechs. So if you have a strong Mighty Mech opening board, prioritize Econ Augment so you can get to level 8 ASAP and get 5 Mech online with Jarvan 2 and Karma 2. This board should then stabilize you enough so you can get to level 9 and find Yone to complete your board with 7 Mighty Mech. The key to winning games though is actually buffing up your mech once you have 7 mech activated, and the way you can do this is by chasing the double mech pilot power-ups on Lucian and Senna, and then slamming leftover items and even random emblems onto those 2 units, so then they'll feed all those juicy stats to your mech. Well, let's move down into the A tier next then, and first up we have the old faithful crewmates. Now if you've been playing this set since the start, you'll definitely know how this one works by now, where you're going to 3-star your 4 main crew carries, Ziggs, Malphite, Sivir and Shen. The best time to play crew is when the game gives you a bunch of crew units right from the first PvE rounds and shops, and also when you get solid reroll augments or augments specific to this comp. If you start the game with 3+ Malphites and 3+ Sivirs and a reroll augment for example, it's a great time to lock it in. The main objective though to take this comp from fighting for 4th to playing for 1st is hitting the 3-star Ziggs and adding in Twisted Fate. Malphite will be tanky enough to carry you through the early game, but Sivir isn't as strong, so it's all about getting Ziggs and TF online, as well as those two strategists in Jarvan and Ryze to help you compete with other late game boards. With the recent buff, Smolder is back in the A tier 2 and stronger than ever, doing extremely well with heavyweights or even Bastion units if contested. Like most reroll comps, you're going to want a reroll augment early game, and you want to get to 50 gold ASAP so you can start pumping gold into your experience to get to level 7, as that's where we have the best odds to 3-star Darius, Smolder and Jayce. This one's a heavy AD comp, so Infinity Edge Giant Slayer and blue buff will keep your Smolder pumping out his ability, doing some ridiculous damage. And Darius likes the Sterax BT IE setup, and all your tank items can go onto Poppy. If you get an early Smolder, you can look out for over 9,000, but if not, go for Gather Force or Efficient. And Darius can take your other power up too, but with Trickster being removed, you can look for Bludgeoner or Crimson Veil. Okay, next up we have a comp you're probably absolutely sick of from last patch. It's the Star Guardians, and yes, they did get nerfed this patch, but they are still doing pretty good, so you shouldn't completely rule them out. Maybe just the tiny team augment. So if you want to play this one, you need to get to level 8 as quickly as possible, as the board spikes with Jinx, Poppy and Cassante all 2-starred. And to win out whilst playing this comp, it's the level 9 power spike, as Seraphine 2 does some pretty bonkers damage, and you can swap out Syndra for a Varus to cap it out even further. Just as last patch, Jinx wants the Gather Force power up with Infinity Edge Giant Slayer and Spear of Shojin, and Poppy wants best defense with Sterax, Protector's Vow and Crown Guard. And that's about it really. You should know how to play this one by now if you did play last patch. And if not, check out the full guide on our website. Soul Fighters is still a really good option if you have a good opener for it with an upgraded Neferi and Kalista, and with some BF swords and combat augments. Because this comp is all about winning and dominating the early game. It also spikes extremely hard with a +1 Soul Fighter emblem, as it allows you to play around Volibear and Braum, which activates 3 traits for your board later on, making this comp and squad just so much stronger. So if you get a strong early Soul Fighter opener and a ton of AD items to slam for Samira, you should be on for an easy top 4. Speaking of top 4s, the Yuumi Prodigy Battle Academia board is still a really consistent option too. Now you typically play around Prodigy in the early game with an upgraded Ezreal or Syndra, with a Bastion setup during stage 2, slamming your AP items on Ezreal or Syndra, and basically pushing to level 8 so you can play around Yuumi and Leona alongside Cassante. Aim for the Bullet Hell power up on Yuumi with her items like Archangels, Dual Gauntlet and a Gunblade. Get Leona and Cassante as tanky as possible and slam all your utility onto Malz. Finally, for our last comp in the A tier this patch, we have Wraith Kayle, which is a comp that can definitely play for first place finishes if you have the right spots, as she scales extremely well into the late game. You're typically going to want to play this comp if you natural a 2-star Kayle early with slammable attack speed items. And look to build Red Buff, Death Cap and Giant Slayer if you can on Kayle to help her cut through all types of tanks. So what you need to do here is 3-star Kayle and Zac as quickly as you can before then pushing high levels to reach level 9, where this comp and Kayle spikes extremely hard. For power-ups, you can look for over 9,000 during stage 2, but if not, go for Double Strike or even Shadow Clone on Kayle, and Zac can take the second fruit and just go for something like Tankzilla. Once you've got that 3-star Kayle all the way to level 9 and activated 6 Wraith, it's time to say hello to some first place LP. Now moving on to the B tier, and these aren't the strongest comps you can play this patch, but you can play them from the right spots, so keep them in the back of your mind so you can whip them out when needed on your ranked grind. Sorcerers is still a solid comp to play into if you're building around Mighty Mech and AP items with Karma, Jarvan and Gwen as your late game carries. With the Ryze buffs, Mentor feels way better to play, and there's 2 versions you can lean towards. You can either reroll the Mentors with Yasuo, Kobuko and Senna all 3-starred, but this might be a bit tricky if there is Janna players in your lobby. Alternatively, you can also just rush to level 8, upgrade your Mentor units and use Ryze and Jarvan as your main carries. Then there's also Jayce and Caitlyn reroll, where you rush to 7 and 3-star these both. But you really need a ton of swords and a reroll augment like Grab Bag or Prismatic Ticket to chase first place with this one. Remember that this comp is also super reliant on good positioning too, so check out the full guide for more info there. Finally, don't forget about Jhin and Mundo reroll either, as this comp can be super strong if you get the right spot for it with early copies of the units or solid items to slam. There's also the Knuckle Duster Vi hero augment or the Double Trouble augment that work exceptionally well in this comp. Speaking of hero augments, there were plenty of nerfs to these this patch, especially to the Prismatic Protagonist augment, and we still need a bit more time to see how these augments are performing this patch. But from what we can tell so far, Garen still feels OP. So there you have it guys, that's our team comps tier list in patch 15.6. Now there are plenty more comps on our website with some still struggling like Ashe and Duelists or Kai'Sa and her friends. As well as some new or returning Fast 9 boards like the Strategist Vara setup or the Juggernaut TF and Zyra comp. But we still need to try these comps out some more first. Don't forget about Crystal Gambit either, as it's still a very solid option to play into, whether that's just for a while to stack up a cash out or if you get the emblem and pump the 7 rewards with 7 Gambit later on. Let us know in the comments guys if you enjoyed this video, as we haven't done a TFT tier list like this before. And if you want to see it again for next patch, drop us a comment below. Thanks everyone for watching and we'll catch you all in the next one. Good luck and take care.